So one of the great things about living in community and having guests, and we do offering service together, is we get an opportunity to talk about Dharma. And so we've been having an interesting conversation today, Jack and Venerable Yeshe and I, as we've been painting the retreat cabin. And it was about our relationship to animals and how far we've come since we were young in our relationship to them. And so I've been thinking about this and also thinking about it with the idea of bodhicitta. You know, if we're going to become awakened, we have to be willing to do it for the benefit of all beings. And I think culturally and maybe economically, spiritually, socially, we have very different relationships to animals. So I've been thinking about my relationship to them recently because I've been doing a lot of purification from past harm. And without putting too much finger pointing, I think that some of the Christian relationship to animals, the whole idea about God giving dominion over all the beasts of the world into the hands of mankind, has put the animals somewhat at a disadvantage. And I find that when I look over my life, even as a child, I didn't have any understanding that animals had feelings, that they suffered, that they were happy, they were hungry, they were sad, they were afraid. And even from a small child, I mean, one of the main pastimes of the children in our household was fly swatting. You know, we had them almost in every room, and if we didn't have a fly swatter, you were more than welcome to use a newspaper. And so I think in the course of my life before I left home, I must have killed thousands of flies. That's one thing that I've been thinking about. And I never saw them as living. I saw them as nuisance, some sort of object that needed to be destroyed. The other one the memory that came up is that I had an uncle and an aunt that came from Massachusetts, and every summer they would come with a box of live lobsters. And so as kids, what we would do is we would pour them out onto the lawn and we'd have races with them to see who would, you know, crawl to the end of some small space. And then in the afternoon, they got put inside, and my mom would have this rolling pot of water boiling, and in they went. You know, and I mean, one minute they were sort of these little creatures that we were kind of hanging on to and playing with, and the next minute, you know, a few hours later, they were on the table with butter. And once, you know, that part, I started to see a little bit of a shift in my mind because I could never watch my mom put them in the pot. I would eat them, because then they weren't alive anymore. And, but I still didn't see them as living beings that would be experiencing incredible amounts of suffering. And so I ate meat for a very, very long time, not thinking of chickens and cows and trout and lobsters as beings that had feelings. So when I met the Dharma, and I started listening to the teachings about the sufferings of the lower realms, and about bodhicitta, that all of these beings, and also rebirth, the whole idea that we all cycle through many levels of realms, and that at one time, due to my karma, I could very well be a lobster, or a fly, or a mosquito, or something like that. And it really started to shift my relationship to them. And you know, for my bodhicitta to be able to grow, right now it's just a conceptual thing, is that I've got to be able, and I'm starting to learn because of the Dharma, that every little being that I see, whether it's the ticks that are up in our forest in the spring, or it's the turkeys, or it's my community, that all of them just want to have happiness and not suffer. And that right now, due to our karma, we are in the realm that we are in, and to look at their kindness in previous lives, and to really very seriously start purifying my karma in relationship to a lot of the sentient beings that I harmed when I was a child. So I think part of it was to let go of, I think, some sort of indoctrination that animals are something that humans have the entitlement to do with whatever they want, and also to not see them as living, breathing, feeling beings. So we have to kind of move through these things, and I will be the first one to say that I have had total ignorance about it. And then to start seeing them as having been mothers many, many times over in our previous lives. And so when I see the process of my unfolding into a kinder, gentler human being, the horrifying reality of what I did, the sincerity and the determination to never do it again, or to rejoice. I mean, the fly swatting had some glee in it when I was a child. And then to be able to cultivate this intense yearning to be able to awaken myself in order to free all living beings who cycle through these realms over and over again. So as a result, and I feel it is a real blessing of my practice, is that I have just really have a sensitivity to animals now that I didn't have when I was a child or even up to being a young adult. When I stopped eating them, when I started practicing the Dharma, when I started seeing them as my kind mothers in previous lives, and to see them trapped in those bodies under the control of afflictions and karma just like me, it has changed my complete relationship to them, that I find them very much, one of the most heartwarming experiences that I have here at the Abbey is to see the turkeys and to see the yellow jackets and to see the birds as having been my kind mothers in the past. So this is not to, you know, get on a soapbox and talk about everybody should be a vegan or a vegetarian, but to see if one is going to practice the Dharma and take the Buddhist teachings to heart, and the foundation of the Buddhist teachings is non-harm, is to see what our relationships are to sentient beings. Which ones do we have sort of a natural warm-hearted openness and we would never think to harm them, like puppies and little turtles and things like that. And then that other whole category that is enemies, the ones that we think harm or perceive them as harm and perceive them as not helpful. And to start to bring some equanimity into our relationship with them and to see them as having been our mothers in previous lives. I found that to be a very powerful practice. And to just really check in with our hearts, you know, why do I, if I eat meat, why do I eat meat? Why do I have relationships to sentient beings in this way or that way? And to see if we can kind of bring them all into a non-harm, equanimous kind of relationship, and see if we can grow our bodhicitta, which is this relationship with them has got to be equanimous and has got to be loving, caring, concern for all of them if we're going to ever be able to generate that in our minds. So I think our relationship to other living beings can grow, and then our bodhicitta can grow if we practice the Dharma the way in which the Buddha has taught it to us. So.